Hello and welcome to my YouTube tutorial. Today we're going to paint just a really simple ocean scene with a little bit of a wave and a shore. So it's going to be really simple. I'm going to use or recommend a large square brush, about a 1 inch, and then a medium 1/2 inch square brush, and then maybe like a smallish round brush, maybe about a 4. So with those 3 brushes, you can totally do this really easily. I'm using the primary colors plus black and white, and let's dive in. I've got the 8x10 panel canvas. I'm going to go ahead and use my white and blue for my sky color. And I want my sky color to be a little bit muted, like a little bit more violet colored. So I'm going to take a little bit of red into my blue with white to soften that blue shade. Notice how the blue got a little bit softer, a little less vibrant, and that's what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little more white, and then it's mostly, white and blue with just a touch of red. And that is going to be my sky color. Now I'm going to go down maybe about 1/3 to 1/4 of the way from the top and make a little horizon line. So everything above that line is my sky, and I'm just going to paint it in with that color. Now, one thing I like to do is just clean my brush off on the canvas, like just get that color off, leave some gaps, and then fill in the gaps with white. Let it be unblended. This gives the look of clouds, very abstract. I'm just brushing side to side. You can really add that however you want. Just try to make some parts look lighter and some parts look darker. All right, perfect. Now, as we go down, we're going to move into a different shade of blue. So it's helpful to sometimes clean your brush, especially if you have a lot of paint on there. I'm going to get that off because I want a different shade of blue. So for this part, I'm doing mostly blue, just a tiny bit of white. And this is what I want the top of my ocean to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that in right under the sky. Make a nice straight line right under the sky. And then what I'm going to do is take that down just a little ways, like an inch. Okay. And then we want to create the look of some waves. So for the waves, we want the part like where we want the wave to be a little brighter and more vibrant. So what I'm going to do is I have that mostly blue with just a touch of white, which looks kind of dark. It's definitely darker than your sky. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and a lot of white into my blue to make a lighter, brighter shade. So it's still blue, just a touch of yellow, not too much. So it should be kind of turquoise or like an aqua color. If you do way too much, it'll look more green rather than blue-green. So we're going for blue-green. And then once you have that, I'm going to pull that right under the other shade of blue there. And again, you can leave some gaps kind of in between your paint as you pull down. And then you can add some parts that look a little darker with more blue. So see how I can make it look a little different. Doesn't have to all be the same shade, so you can pull in a little more blue in some spots. So easy to do. And then as I come down to the shore, I'm adding a ton of white. So I'm going a ton of white, and I want to leave about 1/4 of the canvas at the bottom or so. And we're going to do a sand color down there. So we don't want that to be, so notice how you should have these stripes of color. You don't want it to be a solid shade of blue. So make sure you pull in some parts that have more blue, right, like right here, and then parts that have more white with a little bit of yellow, like right in these spots. And then as we pull down, again, it's like mostly white. So you should still see those blue tones, but they're just so light. Some parts are even like pure white. It's just so, so light. And just let it be crazy. We're loose, very loose. Just expressing. So just keeping it so simple. Now I'm going to clean the brush. And we're going to add our sand color. cleaning the brush off. And then my sand color is really simple. It's just going to be yellow and red and a lot of white, or light sand color. It's really like a light peach. You can even have a little bit of blue mixed into it, just a tiny bit. I kind of had just a tiny bit mixed in my white, and so it's okay if there's a little bit of blue in your peach color. It's just gonna, you know, dull the color a little bit, which is totally fine. And then what I'm gonna do is add that at the bottom. And I don't want the sand to be too yellow or too red, so make sure you have a lot of white mixed in. Really blend it up. And then you're gonna pull it right into the watercolor. So it's okay if some of that sand color goes into some of the water so that it looks almost transparent as your colors come together. Kind of makes it look like the sand is under the water, which it is, especially where it's shallow at the shore, which is what's right where those two colors come together at the bottom. So that works out really well. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch to my smaller brush, and we're going to create a little bit of a shadow for where the shore line starts. So I'm going to take the medium square brush, make some orange, red and yellow. Just going to make my orange. And then add a little bit of black to it, just a little bit. And it gives you a soft brown. It shouldn't be too dark. If you put too much black, it's going to be a dark brown. So I want a soft brown. So I don't want it, meaning it's not too dark. It's kind of almost like a burnt orange. Like you see the orange shade more than you see the dark shade. And you can just gradually add a little bit of black. It goes such a long way. A little bit of black goes really far. And then what I want to do with that color is just go right where my water comes to my sand and just add like a broken line underneath for a little bit of a shadow on my wave, on my shore. So you can do a couple. It doesn't have to just be in one spot. And then a fun thing to do for sand texture, which I really love to do, is to take my water on my brush and add that water into that brown color. You can even darken it just a tiny bit with a little more black if you want. But mainly I just want this brown to get really watery. That way I can splatter some of it in the sand here, which gives a nice sand vibe and texture. So I'm watering it down until it's sort of almost super fluid, like heavy cream or whole milk or something. And then you just scoop up that fluid brown color on your brush, and you gently pull the bristles back just on the bottom to create some speckles in your sand for texture. So see how that gives it really this subtle sand texture? I love that. It's so fun. Now I'm also going to add some white. So I'm going to clean that brush all the way. And what I want to do is take the white on the brush, and then I'm going to do the same thing with that for some more speckles on the bottom. So you can basically just water it down with a lot of water, just putting it in, dip the brush in the water, mix it into the white until it gets similar consistency, like really thinned out. Shovel it up and then splatter it on. Again, this is just going to give you some texture at the bottom. This is so subtle on mine because it's so light already. The sand color is so light, but it does give a little bit of extra texture. So I like doing it. And then just make sure we're going to go ahead and, you know, wipe the excess watery white off the brush. And then I want some solid white. And what I'm going to do is go in and add some seafoam to right where my colors start to get light. So it's like right between the dark and light color. I'm going to add some dashes of white. So just go in and add it. Let it be kind of thick. I'm just doing it with the corner of the brush. And you can kind of arc it. So see how I can pull it in. Just let it be kind of thick in some spots. Then maybe I go right here. See how now by just adding this, and this is going to be a little, can make it a little thicker, give it a little more oomph. And then I can put some of that white right on top of my shadow on my shore. So it can cover it a little bit, but you ultimately want it to show a bit. You can also just brush over any like splatter that got where you didn't want it to go. Just kind of brush over it. And I'm just dabbing thick little pulls of white right on top of those little shadows for my sea foam. And then you can add just as much white texture as you want coming up to the shore. So fun to do this. Maybe have a little bit more like right here. We get to play. And you can also add a little bit of a shadow under your sea foam in some spots by just adding more blue to your brush, maybe even a little bit of yellow for like a deep turquoise. Mostly blue with just a little bit of yellow. And then you can even just kind of pull just a tiny bit of that color underneath your sea foam on some of your waves like that. You don't have to do it, but it can add a little bit of a shadow and a little more depth to that area to just have that a little bit of darkness underneath the wave. And wherever you want to maybe add some of that darker color in your design. And if you don't like it, you can always come in and add that lighter shade back and maybe even add some of that deep turquoise up at the top to make it a little darker. So see how that just darkens it up at the top a bit. It's fun. And then maybe you touch up a little bit with the small brush and the white. So you can always come in and add more sea foam, more texture, however you want to express here. You really want it to look kind of choppy, these brush strokes, because it makes it feel like the waves are moving. And if it's too stiff, your brush strokes are too stiff, you're going to feel that stiffness in the result. So you want to really loosen up. And then again, you can always take that white and add like little swirls, little tiny little wiggles in the darker parts of the paint just to break it up. So if you feel like there's too much darkness anywhere, just swirl in some white right on top of it and sort of blend it and smooth it into the area. Try not to cover over all of it, because some of it might serve a good purpose to create some contrast. So don't completely cover it. I'm just sort of smoothing out some of it with some of this turquoise. So the wave color, or the color under the waves we made, that softer color with more white, you can use that to smooth out that darker color. You can even grab in some extra blue and add some darker elements in as well, you know, just wherever. See how I'm pulling it right under the wave? Just to create some more texture there. And wherever you want to see it, maybe I just want some more blue in some spots. You don't want it to be like so washed out that you don't see any other colors but white. You want to see as many shades as possible. It's just going to make your painting look more interesting. So that's pretty much it. So this is a simple way to create a little almost like abstract seashore painting. Now you have the sky with that hint of red that really differentiates it from the sea colors of the blue in the water, which are blue with yellow, like whereas we have this cooler shade, the blue with red at the top. So that really creates some contrast because those colors look different, but it's still just a variation of blue. And then at the bottom, we had played with that fun texture of sand and that really light colored sand at the bottom to create a perfect little beach scene. So again, hopefully you have fun. Super quick and easy. No reason, no excuse not to paint. I know my biggest comment that I get from people when I conversate with people about making art and finding the time for it is that they don't have the time for it. So they can't find the time for it. And I'm like, well, I could understand if it was taking up hours of your day, but not if it's just taking up 15, 20, 30 minutes. So it's kind of like fitness for your mind. I want you to think of it as a priority, because I think every time I do sit down to paint, it really helps with my energy, helps with my anxiety, helps with my just being able to take a moment to be mindful with something that I'm doing. It's like a mindfulness practice. So if you're one of those people like me who have a hard time just sitting there meditating, you really get the benefits of meditation without the kind of boredom. If I were to be honest, it's kind of boring to just sit there sometimes. So this is a way to be mindful and have a meditative practice in your life. And you also get to create something that didn't exist before. So it has that magical quality as well. So with all that said, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a comment. Let me know what other things you like to paint. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Thanks for watching. Bye.